Okay, so now let's move on to subtracting mixed numbers where we have to borrow from the whole number. So looking at these problems right here, or these mixed numbers right here, you can see that they both have the same denominator. So we're going to start out easy and get a little bit tricky. Okay, so with the same denominator, that means that we don't need to rename them with a common denominator. So let's focus on my fractions here. I can see that 1/3 is smaller than 2/3. So I can't take 2/3 away from 1/3. It's like saying that I could take 4 away from 1. If I don't have enough, I need to go and I need to borrow. Okay, so very similar to yesterday's assignment, you are going to rename 3 and 1/3. So in order to do that, you need to take out a whole. Okay, so because we're dealing with thirds, okay, we are going to borrow a whole from 3. So since we borrowed it, it's going to come down to 2, okay? And we are going to add 3/3 to 1/3 because we borrowed a whole out of that 3 to give to that 1/3, and we named it as 3/3, okay? Because we're dealing with thirds here. So now we have 2 and 4/3, okay? So now I can take 2/3 away from 4/3. So when I do that, I get 4/3 minus 2/3 equals 2/3. 2 minus 1 equals 1. So my answer is going to be 1 and 2/3. Okay, let's try another one with the same denominator. So we are just focusing on borrowing from that whole number. So right now I have 5 and 2/5 minus 2 and 4/5. So I cannot take 4/5 away from 2/5 because 2/5 is smaller than 4/5. So I know that I have to go to that 5 and I have to borrow a whole, okay? So when I go ahead and do that, if I'm borrowing a whole, I know that I am going to rename that whole as 5/5, okay? Because I'm dealing with fifths here. So if I've taken out a whole, then that 5 becomes 4. 2/5 plus 5/5 equals 7/5. Okay, and now I can subtract 4/5 from 7/5. So when I do that, 7/5 minus 4/5 equals 3/5. And 4 minus 2 is 2. All right, so we are going to try one more here. So I want you to write down these problems on a sheet of paper, okay? Once you have finished writing it on a sheet of paper, you're going to go ahead and stop the video, okay? So go ahead and stop the video. Okay, so hopefully you have solved 5 3/8 minus 4 7/8. So first thing we ask ourselves, is this fraction here greater than this one? It is. So that's going to tell me that I need to borrow from this 5, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to borrow a whole, okay? I'm going to take out a whole, just like you guys did yesterday with your practice. You renamed this number, okay? So by taking out a whole, I know I'm dealing with eighths here. So I'm going to rename that whole as 8/8. Okay? So that 5 is then going to become 4. And 3/8 plus 8/8 equals 11/8. Okay? I am now going to come down here and I'm going to subtract 4 and 7/8. Okay? So when I subtract 11/8 minus 7/8, I get 4/8. 4 minus 4 is 0, so my final answer is 4/8, which I'm hoping all of you know is equivalent to 1/2. Okay, so notice with these problems where we have to borrow from the whole number, I haven't given you separate denominators yet. Stay tuned for that for tomorrow, okay? So your work today is going to be to complete another worksheet. You guys did a really great job thinking of different ways that you could send your answers to me. Some of you uploaded a picture that you did on journal paper. Some of you emailed me your answers. Some of you were able to just write it right on using the tool key. So good for you. So that's what I'm going to expect from you guys today. All right. I will be back on tomorrow with regrouping and having to change the denominators to a common denominator. So hopefully this is something that's not too challenging for you, but if it is, Miss Webster has a Zoom opportunity today from 10 to 10:30. So if you're feeling like this is a little tricky, I would highly recommend getting on and working with Miss Webster. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow.